Welcome. I'm Rick Farrant, and our guest today is John Paff, who is the founder and CEO of three marketing companies: Petra Strategic Communications, Fort Wayne Marketing, and Marketing the Midwest. Welcome, John.
Thanks, Rick. It's great to be with you.
Let's start with talking about these marketing companies and what the genesis was of them.
Sure. Back in 2019, I was partner in another agency here in Fort Wayne, Nichols Brand Stories. Really great company, still around. But I was very interested in heading out on my own, starting my own companies to focus on some things that were sort of passion projects for me. One was excellent marketing for the not-for-profit and social service sectors. So we started Petra Strategic Communication, particularly for those sorts of organizations and the faith-based community and so on, schools. But fortwaynemarketing.com was also a URL that was available at the time, and I knew I needed another brand to reach out to emerging businesses, growing companies, and that became our hallmark brand. It really sums up who we are as a company. We are rooted here in the Midwest. I have this amazing team that has great skills. They've made a living all over the country doing this kind of work, but they choose to make a life here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We have a heart for the Midwest, and so we brought that skill set together, and we've been serving small and emerging companies ever since as fortwaynemarketing.com.
And so now Marketing the Midwest. You've talked about two of them, and Marketing the Midwest is a sister company of Fort Wayne Marketing. Talk a little bit about the genesis of that and also the fact that it's kind of a unique specialty. So how did you arrive at determining that perhaps there was a place for a marketing company like that?
Sure. Over several years of time, Fort Wayne Marketing got involved with a number of organizations that sort of had interrelated missions. Missions that really focused on the economic flourishing of a community. We worked with entrepreneurial support organizations. We worked with workforce development organizations. We worked with trade associations. We worked with local entities that were really all about creating opportunity and economic development at the local level. And this became a big focus of our work. It was probably 40-50% of our work in a couple of years. And we thought, there's probably an opportunity to take this skill set and the experience that the team has and branch out beyond Northeast Indiana. When you're called Fort Wayne Marketing, it's hard to sell those skills in Cleveland or Kalamazoo.
That would be.
Yeah. So we thought, well, let's take the same team and repackage them as Marketing Midwest and really niche market into serving local economic development organizations, entrepreneurial support organizations, chambers of commerce, and entities of that sort.
Yeah. Talk about some of the initiatives that you have been involved in the workforce and economic development space.
Well, workforce has been really fun. I think one of the first clients we had in that area was Northeast Indiana Works, an organization I know you know well. But we had an opportunity to come alongside Northeast Indiana Works. They had been using the same branding for 11 or 12 years, and their tagline was a little tired and it needed a refresh. And so we brought our creative team together and brainstormed a little bit about how could we put a fresh spin on what that workforce entity was doing. And we came up with the tagline, Northeast Indiana Works for Me, as a way for their constituents and residents in the area to understand that organization was really working for them. And also the region had great opportunities here for people who were willing to skill up and reskill and really plug into the local economy. It's been great to see that just take root. We still have a really good set of outcomes here in Northeast Indiana in terms of unemployment and people re-engaging in the workforce. It's been tremendous to watch how that's worked.
And then I think you also had a couple of career awareness initiatives that you were involved in where these were designed to not only create awareness, but hopefully create talent pipelines for the future workforce.
Talent pipelines are so important for any community or any region. And here in Northeast Indiana, there are two industrial sectors or economic sectors that are really, really important to the regional economy. One is manufacturing. We're very, very rooted in the manufacturing sector here in Indiana. And the second is healthcare. This is a very important growing sector in our economy. So we were approached to help again, Northeast Standard Works and some of their partner entities like the Don Wood Foundation come up with a campaign reaching out to middle school students and high school students to make them aware of the opportunities first in the manufacturing sector. Something like 65,000 jobs expected to come available in an 11 county region over the next few years here in the area. And those jobs needed talented, skilled people. But, if you talk to 14, 15-year-olds today, they're may not be really aware of the great opportunities to make a living and make a career in those sectors. So our challenge was, how do we connect manufacturing with the interests of very young students? And so we came up with a really interesting opportunity to try to show that students could make what they love. Maybe someone is into music. Well, did you know you can help manufacture musical instruments here in the region? Maybe someone is into camping or boating and lake life. Well, we all know that the RV industry and the boating industry are really big in our area. Maybe someone's into trucks and cars. Well, certainly the automotive industry is very, very big in manufacturing here in our region. So we came up with some wonderful ways to try to connect, again, the passions of the students with the opportunities in manufacturing, and launched all kinds of interesting creative means of making that case.
So
with students.
what did you learn about? It could be about those initiatives which are reaching young people, which is a certain segment. But also, what have you learned about creating successful promotion or marketing in the economic and workforce development space? And again, you can focus on young people, or you can have a broader perspective on that.
I appreciate the question. The first thing I needed to learn was it was important to be in the communication channels where the audience hangs out. I'm 62 years old, Rick, and TikTok is not my favorite social media channel. However, that's where the students are. And so we needed to learn how to be competent in TikTok and, well, with Instagram Reels and all of the other social media channels. We needed to be able to put this message where the students hang out, not in the channels we thought were cool. If we had devised email campaigns, it probably wouldn't have been all that effective. But by getting involved with TikTok, we were able to achieve 2.5 million views in an 11 county area amongst middle school and high school students over a course of several months. It was a tremendous opportunity to penetrate that market with that message.
Yeah, and did you geo-target that? I mean, were you able to actually reach young people and not have this, it floating out into other demographics?
Exactly right. Well, with an international platform like TikTok, it goes everywhere. But we selectively use some advertising dollars to put that message in front of the 11 county region. And again, in households and on mobile devices that we know from research and from data analytics were being used by young people in those communities.
Yeah, and I just happen to know this, but you learned a couple of other things about young people, which I find really fascinating. So maybe I'll just say what they are, but you might want to
Well, I
elaborate.
know where you're going.
Yeah, well, then go ahead. I mean, one has to do with text, and the other has to do with swag. What did you learn about? I know that a lot of adults in the room and all of this planning that you did on some of these initiatives, their eyes rolled. But really, right, you have to cater to an audience. You may not agree with what they like and don't like, but that's where their head is at.
Exactly right. We had come up with some really good copy and so on. We built websites for the manufacturing campaign and the healthcare campaign that followed it, and we tested that with students here at Amp Lab, at Electric Works, and other places, and they gave us two really good pieces of feedback. One, too long, didn't read. TLDR, right? And no big walls of text. It was impenetrable. They needed to have really engaging graphics, particularly motion graphics and video. That was something that they would consume, not a lot of words. And secondly, swag, merchandise. They really were interested in wearing a brand or a message that they could get behind. And so I remember asking in the focus groups, do you mean we can buy your attention with merch? And they said, oh yeah, absolutely. That's where we live. And if it's a message that we can get behind, it's something we're probably going to want to wear. This became a challenge too for our creative team, because there's, a certain corporate branding about healthcare begins with me. But how do we make that relatable to students in a fashion sense or a style sense that they'd want to actually, wear a shirt or a hoodie or a ball cap that had that kind of message on it? So we worked pretty hard at creating some very creative
Yeah, and
ways.
you didn't depend on people our age to
No,
create that, did you?
frankly,
Because I don't think we're cool anymore.
no, the grandparents and parents in the room, forgive me, we did ignore them. We listened very carefully to the students. This is why research is so important in marketing. You have to go to the target audience and find out what motivates them, not what you think might appeal to them, but you have to find out what really motivates them.
Generally speaking, now, how does a marketing company uh, get to the point where it distinguishes itself from the rest or stands out from the rest? Because there's a lot of noise out there. There is a lot of promotion. There's a lot of advertising. Um, how do you find that space where you stand out?
Yeah, I think there's two ways. You have to have really solid creative. I mean, all the advertising agencies, they all enter these awards and they all give each other awards, and awards are nice. But what really matters is, have you moved the needle for your client? Have you really made an impact on the target audience? Have you caused a response? The best way to demonstrate the success of any marketing campaign is that it actually worked. So we put a lot of effort at Fort Wayne Marketing into providing monthly analytics reports, key performance indicator, KPI reports that shows what's actually happening with their website traffic, with their social media traffic, with their open rates on email campaigns, and other kinds of things that we do. And, those reports, they hold us accountable to make sure that we are bringing our very best creative and being effective for the client. And it helps the client to know what it is that they're paying for. We can trace back, say, a Google Ads campaign. We have a client in Southern California. They sell manufacturing machinery. We can make a connection between the amount of money they're spending on Google Ads, for example, and the amount of times their phone rings, so they have an opportunity to provide an estimate or quote on a piece of machinery in their warehouse. Those kind of KPIs are what matters.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up on that because I know there are a lot of CEOs that don't feel that impressions and clicks in their world um, represents ROI, and and I know it's very difficult sometimes to make a direct correlation between, say, if you're selling something or sales, or if it's in the case of education, getting kids into seats in a program. Are there ways beyond that kind of measurement that you can say to a client, look what we did, other than to say, because the standard is, right, John, the standard is the more you get out there, the better chance you have. Is there a way of getting more than just impressions and clicks?
Well, yeah, with an awareness campaign like what we had with healthcare and with manufacturing, well, awareness is driven by impressions and clicks, right? So, and again, when you're working with students, there are certain federal laws and privacy laws that prevent you from perhaps collecting personally identifiable information about teenagers. Well, okay, so we got to work within those limits, and we can measure what we can measure, and what we can't. But to your point, Rick, yes, there are direct ways, particularly in the digital age in which we live, to measure success. Now, some of that measurement we can do, and some of the measurement the client will have to do. If they're selling widgets, we're going to want to look at their sales data. If they are enrolling in courses, we're going to want to look at their enrollment data and do the very best we can in tying in, what they paid for in terms of advertising and PR and what actually resulted at the end of the day.
I also want to explore, because this term comes up all the time, brand. So there's still a fair amount of people out there that think brand is a logo. Um, we know that it's more than a logo, but essentially, what is brand?
Well, it's a really interesting question. And I was just at Trine University yesterday. It's funny that you should ask. And we did not set that up. But I was just there speaking in a marketing class yesterday, and that was the subject. What's a brand? And what is marketing? And what is this thing? And I told a really interesting story. We had a client come to us on the 23rd of November one year. This is Thanksgiving week. And he's an engineer and an inventor, really nice guy. And he had a really great idea for some new technology for advancements in grow lights.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Okay. And he came to us and said, we need to have this up and running as an e-commerce web store by January. I'm going, happy holidays to you too, Tom. But anyway, we did. We hit the ground running. I asked him, what's the name of your company? He said, I'm really hoping you can help me with that. What's the name of this product that you're manufacturing? Well, I'd hoped you could help me with that too. Tom, do you have lines of business? Do you have product names? No, I'm really hoping you can help me with that. Do you have a website or a domain name registered? No, I'm going to lean into you for that. Well, okay, so it's a big challenge in maybe 6 or 8 weeks of time to get this thing done, but we did. We went through a lot of research. We proposed, I think, 50 different brand names. We narrowed it down to 2. He selected one, tested that with a little audiences. We took it into design, created him a killer logo, created him some great packaging for his products. We branded all the 16 different kinds of grow lights that he was manufacturing for different purposes. We had a super website, e-commerce website up and running that had, the target audiences identified, the SEO done. Anyway, I told this story to the students at Trine, and he was up and running within 6 or 8 weeks. And I said, okay, guys, he's got all this stuff, all this work, all this investment. Does he have a brand? And the students kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, no, he does not yet have a brand, because a brand is more than that. A brand is really not controlled entirely by the company or by the manufacturer. The brand is really something that lives in the mind of the consumers, those who would be buying these grow lights in this instance. The brand is their total experience, not only with the website or with the product itself or with the customer service, but all of that. Until there's an understanding of what that company does and what it means in the minds of consumers, it doesn't really exist yet. You can have a website, but you don't have a brand.
Yeah, well, I've always, I've heard you, I'm sure you've heard it too. I've heard that a brand is a company's or organization's promise, which is a shorter way of saying it. That if you trust, I guess trust is a big part of that. If you trust that company, that's part of your brand, and that's why people turn to you to buy stuff or to have you do think tanks or whatever it happens to be. I mean, is that simplifying it too much?
I agree. Marty Neumeyer, who is the author of The Brand Gap and a whole host of other books on branding, he's a designer by experience and by training, but the fact is he knows a whole lot more about branding. And what he likes to say is the brand isn't what you say it is, it's what they say it is. Mm-hmm. And until there's that trust relationship between the consumer and the manufacturer, or the buyer and the seller, the brand doesn't really exist. And that has to be leveraged, as you said, Rick, on trust.
Yeah, I did want to say really quickly, I hadn't really thought that I was going to ask this question, but logo is part of the whole package. And oftentimes you see people switching out fairly regularly logos and taglines. That's a mistake, right?
It is. I urge caution. I urge caution.
Because people get used to them.
Well, and it has to match. There are times when a brand refresh is necessary, and that may involve a logo redesign. Johnson & Johnson just went through this, for example. Now, we did not do this work, please understand, but Johnson & Johnson has for 100 years had that beautiful red script Johnson & Johnson logo, but they, over the last decades, been in a lot of trouble as a company with lawsuits about talcum powder and everything else, and they really wanted to move away from being recognized as a company.
But I think you said something important. They had that brand, they had
for 100 years.
Look for 100 years.
Well, it lasted, and it was a household brand. Everybody recognized it. But again, they wanted to move away from what was familiar and what was traditional to reposition the company in the minds of consumers. And so baby shampoo and talcum powder and Band-Aids were no longer really the thing that they wanted to be known for. They wanted to be known for medical innovation.
Yeah.
And so they kept the signature red, but they changed the font treatment, they changed the logo, and they changed the brand promise. They changed everything about how they positioned their company, to the point where they spun off a lot of those household products and really doubled down and focused on medical innovation.
You know, one of the first things that an organization or a company gets rid of when money gets tight or when there's some volatility in the economy, and certainly in 2025, we've already seen a fair amount of volatility, is marketing. Um, I don't want to poison your answer, but is that a good thing or is that a mistake? And if it's a mistake, why is it a mistake?
We started Fort Wayne Marketing on the eve of a global pandemic, right? It was late 2019. And who is, I mean, my timing was great, right? To start this new company when really the whole economy was going to shut down for a while. And what I did at that time is I told my clients, a few of them that there were, this is not the time to go dark. Honestly, when the economy is so disrupted and everybody's life is so disrupted right now by this thing we're dealing with the pandemic, this is no time to go dark. In fact, people are going to be relying on you to communicate better and more thoroughly and more clearly and more transparently than maybe you've ever done before, because they're now stuck in their homes and on their cell phones and they need you to pivot. So we helped a church put its Sunday sermons online. We helped a number of organizations improve their web services, some of them, again, pivoting to e-commerce when they had not done that before. We helped a number of clients, communicate by email and such that maybe they had allowed to get really stale. A lot of website refreshes done in those period of time. But it was not a time to pull back. It was a time to lean in and meet people where they were.
Yeah, I think that a lot of companies and organizations, though, the mindset is now that I have less money or now that things are a little uncertain, I need to make sure that I'm putting the majority of my money into programming. And I think that's what happens, right? It's like I've got to provide the service. And so money gets taken out of marketing and now I'm putting it into programming, which I can understand why they might think that way.
Well, here's another example. We're recording this, in the first quarter of 2025, and there's a lot of noise right now about tariffs and how tariffs are going to impact the global manufacturing community, particularly. And, we have many clients in the manufacturing space and, some that sell manufacturing equipment, frankly. And our advice to them is, well, there's no tariffs on used machinery that's in your warehouse and you're ready to sell. So reach out to manufacturers and say, hey guys, if there's uncertainty in your market, now's the time. Now's the time to buy.
Yeah.
Avoid it.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. I actually am curious. I've known you for a while, about why and how you just got into marketing, because it occurs to me, I don't think that um, we're both ancient right now. Right? We're both old, but when we were younger, I don't think that there are a lot of young people um, that are thinking, you know what, when I grow up, or when I get out of high school, when I do my college education, I want to go into marketing. Marketing is not one of those touchstone careers that's top of the mind with young people, I don't think. So how did you get there?
Oh my God. That's a long and complicated story, but
Okay, well, you can shorten it up
I'll
a
give you
little.
the Reader's Digest version. I do not have a degree in this. My undergraduate degree is in secondary education. And then I decided I didn't want to do that after having my first student teaching experience my senior year. Kind of late to figure that out. So I did what every person in that situation does. I went to grad school and I took a graduate degree or a master's in public policy, but not public relations. My first job out of grad school was actually working in a public interest law firm that was doing advocacy work, and they needed somebody to handle their communications, their PR work. And so I wrote newsletters and I did fundraising appeals and we did speeches and we did booklets, and I found a niche. I found a way of communicating what they were doing in terms of, their public advocacy, and found I could use some natural skills in that way. And that job led to a position at Huntington College, then now Huntington University, doing their public relations. That's what's got me to Indiana. Built a 20-year career there, and then joined the for-profit side of the economy for a change when I was 50 years old, and went into the agency world, again, leveraging experience that had grown over time.
Well, as a former longtime journalist, we used to call that stuff the dark side. And if a journalist went to the dark side, they were chastised for doing that. And I think it was largely because, of course, the media now is so messed up. I mean, people can't tell the difference between what's news and what's opinion, and we have a lot of bias in the media, and that's a whole nother program. But when I came through the journalistic ranks, we felt that we were telling the truth. We were telling the facts, and you guys were spinning stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spin is a 4-letter word, Rick. And
Oh,
it is.
well,
And so-
it's-
okay, so I'm a longtime member of something called the Public Relations Society of America. I'm accredited in PR. And one of the ethical principles that is taught in that industry to get at this perception is that spin is a 4-letter word. We may be advocates for our brand, but our goal as PR and marketing people is to inform public discourse. We may be representing a particular company or viewpoint or point of view, but the goal is to inform the marketplace of ideas where people can make their own choices. And honestly, journalists are a big partner in that.
I think that's a really good answer, John. I appreciate that. But I'm going to ask you another question. Maybe it's a curveball. Have you ever felt or crossed the line in promoting something? Like how many internal discussions, whether it's with yourself or with the staff, where you'll say, geez, I really like that approach. It's not entirely accurate. Do you find yourself walking up to the line a lot? Is that
I think there have been similar situations to that. I think there have been times when I was advocating to upper management the disclosure of information that they were very reluctant to disclose. But I said, look,
oh, that's interesting. That's
it's
the
the
flip,
other
that's
side
the
of
flip
it,
side of it. Yeah.
exactly. So, no, look, here's the thing. They're going to find out anyway. Why not be upfront about this? Why not put our best foot forward, and why not maintain trust with people rather than being seen as pulling something, put the wool over their eyes? Why not be as forthcoming and as transparent as we possibly can? I think particularly these days in this digital world in which we live in, that's what people expect. They when information moves so quickly and disinformation moves even quicker, I think it's essential. It's really put upon every company to speak first, speak often, to speak truthfully. Because again, the truth is going to win out in the end. People are going to find out. It's better for you to lead that discussion than it is to let others take pot shots at you.
So the long and short of it is, even though spin is a 4-letter word, you don't spin.
No. We may advocate, but we don't spin.
Okay.
No.
That's great. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here today and it's a very enlightening conversation. And that wraps up our latest edition. One of the things we like to say is, remember, it's all about telling the story.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Midwest Flourish podcast. Want to dig deeper or get involved? Head to marketingthemidwest.com to explore how we can work together to empower your community to flourish. Let's keep the Midwest momentum going and shape the future of our region together.